All right, I'm back with part two. This video, I'm going to be talking about the dynamic, the new paradigm, the new macro environment that we're in. I think could be for the next 4 years. But before I start, just a couple of things. I talk a lot about mental game. Mental game is the most important aspect. I've been drawing the analogy between what we do as traders and our success. And I've been using the analogy of fighters. I've been using the analogy of Navy SEALs, people who train, and their training is to adapt and really embrace enormous stress, enormous adversity, and to overcome that. Okay, that's what trading really is. I've talked recently, I've been using Bruce Lee. His philosophy is amazing. Yesterday, I read you a quote from him where he talked. First of all, he describes martial arts. What is martial art? I mean, nobody says it like this. He said martial arts is the true expression of oneself. It's like perfect honesty with yourself. And I've even before I stumbled onto Bruce Lee's philosophy, I had been saying that to you, that trading will expose who you really are. Okay, and by being exposed, if you are self-aware, you will understand the reason for your lack of success. And most likely, I would say in all cases, the reason for a lack of success is not really wanting that success, not doing what is required of you to achieve it. Every single person here could have success in trading. Okay, it is not about the system. I've been through that so many times. Not about the methodology. It's really not even about the information. It's all about you. But a lot of people, most people are quitters, and they quit not knowing the real reason, but really that adversity, the stress, the difficulty, the lack of patience, the lack of discipline, the lack of detachment, all those things will cause them to quit, and then they will, they will rationalize that in some way. Anyway, Bruce Lee, just to repeat that quote that I gave you yesterday, he said, and again, I mean, the guy, what a mind. I mean, he said, in martial arts, the punch or the kick is not about knocking down that person who is standing in front of you, but it's about knocking down your ego, your fears, and your hang-ups. And I said, that's how you have to look at every trade, that's how you have to look at every trade, every investment. That's how you have to look at this activity. The profits will come. You shouldn't even think about, once you put a trade on, and I've said this before, what happens in between the time you put that on and the time you take it off is meaningless. It's going to bounce around. It's going to bounce around. That's why people say, oh, I need to know that exact point of when to buy and when to sell, Mike. Your service is no good. You don't tell me the exact point. Your timing is bad. Yeah, I've been all over that. Okay, that's just BS. That's people deluding themselves. All that stuff in between, you put it on and you put it off, doesn't make a difference. It's how you comport. It's how you behave. It's how you manage yourself in that time. And it's about knocking down your fears, knocking down, containing that stress, containing that anxiety. We all go through it. I've been doing this for almost 40 years. There's not a trade I put on that I don't feel that, okay? Anyway, I'll do some more on the mental game later. I'm just going to say one last thing. There's a great channel, the History Channel. You can get it on YouTube. There's a series on the History Channel called The Selection. If you go to the History Channel on YouTube and you look up The Selection, it's about it's about a group of people who go into kind of a Navy SEAL training program. And there's interviews with these people, and they talk to these people. They talk to the instructors. They talk to the contestants, the people who go into this program. Very, very enlightening. Really gets into that mindset, what they're up against, how they're able to dig down deep and overcome. I'm telling you, you have to develop this. So, the History Channel, the show is called The Selection. All right, now on to the dollar and the new paradigm that I think. Okay, so I talked about Trump being a monetary policy hawk. He said that all through the campaign. I think he was very critical of Janet Yellen. She will definitely be replaced. And even before that, I think there are a couple of Fed appointments that he could possibly make this year. A couple of guys are leaving, and he could put some new people on the Fed, and they're going to be monetary policy hawks. But regardless, the Fed has put in motion already, as a result of these rate hikes, has put in motion price setting higher. Okay, a lot of people have a problem with this whole, I get emails all the time, like, Mike, I don't get it. I thought high interest rates are bullish for the dollar, right? I tried to explain that a currency is the same thing as a bond, but it's a bond of zero maturity. Everybody understands that when the Fed raises interest rates, bond prices go down. And that discount to par, right, the face value of the bond, reflects the implied yield. All right, so when rates go up, bond prices go down. Same thing with the currency. If you look at the forward curve of any currency where monetary policy is getting tighter, right, where they're rising rates, the forward curve, you have a backwardation, the prices are lower. And that discount to par being the spot price of the currency, that reflects the implied yield. Number one. Number two, the government being a net payer of interest, when the rates go up, it is equivalent to a fiscal expansion, right? That is a net increase in national income, all else being equal. And the price setting higher is inflationary, right? You're raising prices. So just, from a basic understanding, when you raise prices, the same amount of money buys a smaller quantity of goods and services, right? That's the most basic definition of inflation. And so that's reflected in a lower exchange value in the currency. You get less for your money. All right, now here's what's going to happen. Under the current economic orthodoxy, that's the crap that's taught in Harvard and Stanford and all these places, that raising rate, these guys don't understand it, right? I mean, you still see negative interest rates in places like Europe and places like Japan, thinking that it's stimulative when they're sucking out huge amounts of income. I'm sorry, people say, Mike, how do you know this? And they don't. It's a belief system, and it's not just me. MMT understands this. It's a belief system, and the orthodoxy now of mainstream economics is that higher rates quash inflation. It doesn't. It's price setting. So these guys are going to raise rates, which they've started. And again, we saw gold rally in December of 2015. The day after they raised rates. We saw gold this December. Maybe not the day after, but now look at it after they raised rates. Very simple. People could just observe and understand these things if they have an open mind and they question. Most people don't. They'll see the gold going up and they're just like, they can't connect the dots. Same thing with the dollar. Dollar's going down. They can't connect the dots. Anyway, so they've set in motion this cycle of price setting higher. Now, we don't know when their next rate hike is going to be. And, politics infuses itself into this a little bit because Janet Yellen, she might want to keep her job. She might be thinking, or understanding that Trump is a monetary policy hawk. That might accelerate, because I just looked on the FedWatch tool, that based off of where Fed funds futures are trading, it doesn't show the likelihood of another rate increase till June of 2017. I think maybe it's going to come sooner than that, all right? And certainly if you bust that expectation of a June rate hike and you make it something like March, then, that's going to be really something. So anyway, the Fed hikes rates, inflation rises, the dollar goes down, inflation increases some more, right? Fed hikes rates again. You get in place this vicious circle of higher rates, higher inflation, lower dollar, higher commodity prices, higher gold. Now, how does a recession occur? Because you're saying, Mike, it's a fiscal expansion. How can there be a recession? What happens with inflation is that prices rise faster than income, all right? At some point, prices start rising faster than income, and that shuts down consumption. It shuts down investment. That's when you have your collapse or your correction. All right. So, I've often said to people, when it comes to investing, I mean, basically, we're on a 2-year or a 4-year cycle, and that's because it's really politically driven. The people at the controls, those are elected people. You could talk about the presidential cycle every 4 years, and every 2 years you have a congressional election, which might change the composition of Congress. It might put new policy into place. All right. Sometimes it doesn't. Keeps going. But in general, you basically can put a position on and hold it for 2 years and then see what happens in the next election. And sometimes you can hold it for 4 years. Sometimes you can hold it for 8 years. Those are the cycles. 2, 4, 6, 8. So Trump's here for 4 years, man. Now, the thing that would, let's say, break this cycle, which would change my view, and let me just interject something that it's very much in a state of flux. They're talking about repealing Obamacare. In fact, the Senate made the first step yesterday towards repeal. Obamacare carries with it $100 billion annually in government and federal subsidies for people who can't afford insurance. You repeal Obamacare, and I'm not going to make an opinion. I'm not going to give an opinion, my personal opinion on Obamacare. I'm just going to say from an economic standpoint, you cut the $100 billion in subsidies. Now we're talking about a different situation, but we got to see what happens on that. Right now, what I'm focused on is the rate hike cycle. Price setting higher, inflationary, negative for the dollar, bullish for gold, bullish for commodities, short-term negative for the stock market, right? We're going to have what I said in the past is multiple reduction, okay, the opposite of what you have when they cut rates with multiple expansion. And but then eventually that fiscal injection of more income, that helps sales, it helps revenues, it helps profits. So let's take it one step at a time, but that's how I see it playing out. More later. I ran a little bit over time on this video.